Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Perfectly Mentored. I'm your host, Jason Portnoy. My guest today is Brandon Steiner, the head of Steiner Sports, a company that I've actually spent a lot of money with. I actually own a lot of memorabilia that I buy from Steiner Sports. I use the Steiner auction a lot at one point. Fascinating business owner. I've been following his content for quite some time, reached out to him on LinkedIn. He was nice enough to let me come in and pick his brain for the podcast. So hopefully this provides a ton of value to you. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Jason. I appreciate it. And I'm just honored that you came up here. Did we get to give you the tour of the sports facility? Or?
I didn't get the tour yet, but I want the tour after. There's so much good stuff hanging around.
The warehouse is 40,000 square feet alone. And this is our 30th year in business at Steiner Sports. I appreciate the auction business because right now I'm doing a charity auction, so I'm raising some money for my charity. But there's always an auction on SteinerSports.com. Our first company we did was Steiner Sports Marketing was not collectibles. I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
And it was just really marketing players. And I was like booking like 1,500, 2,000 players a year. I was like a booking machine. That and a quarter, man, probably didn't get me far. That in those days, back in the late 80s, 90s, those appearances weren't really netting a lot of money. Most players were appearing for $1,000, $2,000. I kind of just missed the bubble on that. Now, that company still exists. We still do it. But, now these guys are more likely to get 10, 20, 30, 50 grand, 100 grand from one day. This morning, we just did an appearance with Mariano Rivera down at the stock exchange, for Oracle, which was a very hefty fee. So the Steiner Collectibles started, which most people know Steiner for, autographed merchandise, some licensed products, and all kinds of different game used and things like that with teams and players, the Yankees, and we have partnerships with the Garden, Knicks, Rangers, the Nets. You've known us with Derek Jeter or Eli Manning or Mariano. That really started in the mid-'90s, and that company still exists today. And we're very excited. Probably 25 million autographs we've secured, maybe more. And thousands and thousands of appearances to help businesses grow. That's really what I love doing. I love helping people grow and help charities grow. And, I started the sports auction business with charities. We're bringing stuff to charities was a concept that I had started. And I wasn't the first person to do it, but I was the first person to organize it so that charities could call a company up like mine and get stuff. I'm not 100% bullish on it because I'd rather the charities just make a lot of money, but it's a concept that I started back in the 90s, mid-90s, and just helping charities they needed the help. And I've kind of started a whole bunch of different things. I mean, it's been a great run. I'm very grateful that customers appreciate and respect our brand and keep coming back. I mean, I didn't really think it would ever go 30 years. So it's been a great run. I never take it for granted. Matter of fact, I'm still committed like I was when I was 29 when I started the business and just trying to figure out what our customers want and getting it for them. It's not complicated. I mean, ask customers what they want. Keep asking. Keep getting in front of them. But asking these days, it can be a little tricky. Although I'm on all social media and I'm constantly out there. But you'll see me at the ballparks. You'll see me at games. You'll see me on the street. I'm just a regular guy. And I keep asking people, and I keep listening to kids and what do you want? What's going to rock you, man? What's going to get you excited? What can I do in sports that would get you excited? And I try to deliver it. That's my game. I mean, so far so good.
So when you got started, I mean, everyone wants to be around athletes, right? Everyone wants to find a way to monetize them and be around them. How were you able to get in front of all these athletes and get them to trust you and build a business around that?
Well, first of all, I started in the restaurant business, so I met a bunch of athletes. One thing does lead to another, but it's hard, man. I mean, one night all of a sudden I showed up and all these athletes like, wow, Brandon Steiner's here. It's like, who's that guy over there with the scar on his left eye, and what the hell does he want? You got to be around, you got to show up. And I think the answer to your real question is, first of all, it's really hard, but second of all, it's the same way you get in front of anybody you're trying to get in front of. Whether it be a girl you're trying to meet, a school you're trying to get into, you have to figure out how you can provide value. And this is what people don't talk much about. They talk about what they want to do, but they don't talk enough about what value you can provide. See, when you can provide value, that interests people. If I can provide value to you, value is what you could do for someone that they can't do for themselves. So even athletes and celebrities can't do everything. They need help. Your job is to figure out what they possibly need help with. And that's what you should be doing when you're a business owner, or if you're running a pod or whatever you're doing. Is like, what are your customers? Who are they? What do they really need? Not what is it you want to sell them. Not you want to. What do they really need? And believe me, when I started to get in front of these guys, I was doing a lot of charity golf outings for them, doing their fan mail. I said, you got all this mail. I know what to do. So I'll answer it. I'll open it up. I'll bring in the important stuff. I'll respond to the other stuff. I'll at least put it in order so you felt like a decent human being. When you went to sleep at night, you didn't act like you were ignoring all these poor kids that were writing you these letters from their heart, hoping to maybe get an autograph from you or be able to meet you. And then once in a while there'd be some important letters that talked about some life crisis issues in some of that mail. And Lawrence Taylor and Kevin Moss at the time, John Starks, Otis Anderson, I opened up all their fan mail, man. I mean, you do what you have to do to get in front of these. When you got people that are busy and they're well known or they're talented, which is what we're all trying to get a hold of these people so we can hitch a ride. You got to find something they need help with, and you got to be willing to help them, even though it may not be quite a help for yourself. Most people, it's a give and get world, and that's it's playing small, and it's a short game. And if you're doing that, you're better off really just going to get a union job. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe bartending, good gig, working the post office, not bad. That kind of stuff. And those are good jobs. But if you want to get into service and marketing and promotion and building a business or being an entrepreneur, you got to play the long game. And the long game is you got to want to do what you're doing more than if you're a doctor, you got to want to help people get better more than being a doctor. If you're
otherwise you're stuck in school for 7 years.
Yeah, I mean, at the end you're just doing it for the money grab, and you're not doing it for the right reasons. Like if you're a teacher, you're going to want to teach kids more than you want to be a teacher. If you're a coach, you want to coach kids and help kids get better more than being a coach. And I think that, if you want to get into some of these businesses, you got to want to do what's required, not what is going to necessarily get you a big paycheck all the time. And when you do good, which is what's important here, and the more good you can do, it'll lead you to doing well. And a lot of people have the opposite. They think, well, when I do well, then I'll do some more good. Find out what the most important thing has to be the most important thing. And you got to do the most important thing for the most important people. You got to know who's important and what's important. And when you follow the theory of doing the most important thing for the most important people, then you got a ball game.
So let's talk about that. What's your North Star?
Well, my wife, my kids, first and foremost, they're the most important thing, and I've got to make sure that I know what's important to them, and I do the most important things for them. And I can't just, hope that I get to that. I can't hope that when I get around to it, or just another few weeks of some big sales or some big clients I'm working on, then I'll get to that. And it's got to be a precedent every day if you really want to stay married, if you want to have kids that like you, and you want your kids to grow up being successful. If you're like, just into a money grab, you wake up one day, the closet's empty, your kids hate you, but you got a shitload of money. And we see a lot of people like that, right? So, my North Star, is, my wife and kids. And it always wasn't that way, by the way. I mean, I woke up many days, I have no idea if my wife was alive. I may have stepped on her head on the way out. And God knows, not that I didn't love my kids and I try to be a good dad, but I wasn't following them as close as I should have. And I'm embarrassed about that. I'm not happy about that. But it's never too late to be the kind of person you want to be. And, I did learn quickly about how important that was, and without losing my faith in my wife and faith in my kids. And so that's worked out. And the second thing in my North Star is my health. In my new book, Living on Purpose, I talk a lot about that. It's like you want to achieve a lot of things. You want to be effective. You want to be efficient. Yeah, of course, we all do. Well, you need energy. You need to recover. You need to have the right mindset. You need to have clarity. You need to see things. Perspective is so important. And perspective in business is huge. But you would make an argument that perspective, if you're tired, your perspective will be changed. If you're not eating well and you're overweight or you're not healthy, your perspective will be different. You're in pain. You're not comfortable. You don't feel great. So if you want to make the best decisions and try to get the best result, you need a lot of energy. So my second North Star, which is probably not the answer you were looking for, but is my health. I've got to keep myself healthy. You hear me now in this conversation. This is how I've been for 30 years. You're not going to walk in my office going, not in a good mood today. He's a little off today. No, I will kick your ass every day of the week and twice on Sunday. And if I'm not ready, I don't come in. which once in a while, I admit it, I don't come in. But when I'm here, I think consistency over time equals credibility, and I think it's really important that you bring your A game as often as you can. You don't want to be on an operating table and your doctor right before he puts you to sleep goes, didn't really sleep well, I'm not eating well, I hope this operation goes okay, but this is not one of my best days. I mean, that's not a guy you want operating on you, right?
Yeah.
So to me, like, I one of the things I pride myself is the energy and the consistency that I try to bring here every day to try to figure out what my customers want. I know who's important. I know what my customers want because I'm asking them and I'm listening. With social media these days, what a blessing. I can't believe CEOs and CMOs are just not more on social. I mean, not just posting and doing contests, which is good, but I mean getting on social and talking to people.
So
what an opportunity.
I was going to get there, but you just segued.
So that's my second North Star.
You segued perfectly for me. You're at a point right now, 30 years, Steiner Sports is super well known. Why are you as Brandon Steiner making such a big push on social media? Like you're going all in on attention. Why?
Well, first of all, it's a great opportunity. Helping people is not a burden. Communicating with people and finding out where their troubles or finding out what they're doing is not a burden. I talk to like friends that are running companies. Oh yeah, that's social media. It's a burden. It's an opportunity. Helping people and going on social media or just trying to help people for the reason of just helping them is an opportunity that will lead you to sheer joy. So, when I go on LinkedIn and I find people that are having trials and tribulations, I know you don't have the biggest podcast. You don't have my guys check you out yet. True. And I think one day you will, but you seem like a nice guy, and I like the name of your pod. But at the end of the day, I try not to be so judgmental, and I really I don't want to be that guy that, unless you got 5 zillion followers, I'm not going on your pod. I can't do every pod, but I really want to treat people with respect. And I was in your shoes one day just working my way up, and a couple people gave me a break. And maybe doing this pod helps you, I don't know, or maybe it gives you confidence, or maybe it just gives you, by the fact that I came on there, some other big name or some other name comes on and says, wow, Brandon did that, well, I'll do that. I just think, we're here to help as many people as you can, and that's why I go on social. I go on social because it keeps me current. It keeps me in the flow of what's really going on. I don't want to become a dinosaur. I'm still in school learning how this all works, and the honest, it's been great. And I mentor a lot of people. I'll say this, and I'm very grateful to do it. I love mentoring a lot of kids, but I got a lot of kids mentoring me, and I'm extremely grateful for a whole bunch of teenagers that took an interest in me. And I hope it's been reciprocal, but, I tell a lot of my friends, I'm like, you mentor some people. Well, I do that. Well, you should go find some kids to mentor you, because what you need to learn, you ain't getting from another 40, 50-year-old. And, there's amazing talent right now with some of our teens and kids in their 20s. There's some brilliant kids out there that really have figured out some incredible things that are really just getting started. And, if they could show you a few things, because I think it is a combination. I think some of those kids are amazing what they've created on social media and what they're doing in businesses at the ages of 15 and 16. But at the same token, some of the blocking and tackling that some of us old dogs are doing, like still writing a handwritten note, picking up the phone, or learning how to handle a meeting, is stuff that I can coach those kids on. So it's been brilliant for me. I mean, I love it, man. I feel great about my relationship with my customers. And I don't regret a minute of my time. I think my wife may regret a little bit of some of the time when I get a little entrenched, whether I be on LinkedIn and that kind of thing. But I'm very grateful that my customers take the time and tell me the truth. I mean, what a blessing that is.
And you're accessible. I mean, that's a big thing.
Yeah, I try. I mean, but I think I've been that way for 30 years. I mean, most people, the best comment I get is like, Brandon, you're the same guy you were in Brooklyn when you had no money as you are now. Like, I'm the same guy if you met me 25 years ago, a little scattered, a little ADHD, hopefully a little more under control than it used to be. But generally speaking, like, I'm like a regular guy. Like, I don't think I'm any better than anybody else. My situation has been a little more fortunate, but as a person, we're all the same, right? I mean, and my goal is to help as many people as I can. I don't regret my situation because, listen, nobody grew up more poor than me. I mean, in the dictionary, poor, you see a picture of me. If you got an old Webster's, I mean, poor, food banks, welfare, I mean, the whole thing. And it wasn't that pleasant, when you don't have food and you're hungry as a kid. But And now I've obtained a good amount of wealth, but I don't feel any different. I'm still friends with a lot of my friends from growing up. Matter of fact, it's easier to be friends with them because I know we're really friends. Friends in college that were probably betting with that. I wouldn't imagine 30 years in school. 30 years in business. I have my friends in school that were betting with I lived past 30. It's how crazy I was in college. But so I take a lot of pride in that. A lot of my peers get on me about that. Like, why is your door in your office open? Why are you talking to all your employees like that? Or why do you take calls from all these people? I'm like, because I can. And because for some people it means something. When a 17-year-old calls me up and I'm able to guide them and talk them into going to college versus starting a business at 17, they're probably not prepared for. And I enjoy that stuff.
You're around a lot of successful athletes, some of the greatest athletes of all time. You also meet with a lot of business owners, really successful business owners. What are the similarities and characteristics between a successful athlete and a successful business owner?
Well, first thing I just want to say, the most important thing when you meet someone successful is, and if listen, it's exciting. Like I'm with Mariano there this morning at the stock exchange, and if you're with Muhammad Ali, there's all.
I'm a Red Sox fan.
So but with David Ortiz, Kurt Schilling, I did the whole 2000. It's great, but I tell people all the time, do not chase the money. Chase the things that make the money. When you're with a celebrity, if you're with anyone that's extraordinary at what they do, if you forget everything I've talked about up to this point, remember this. This would be the most important thing I could say to you, and that is, when you're with someone extraordinary, whether it be the best post office person you've ever seen, the garbage man that comes picks up your garbage, but nobody does it like he does, the waiter, the bartender. When you're around someone who's the best you've ever seen, don't get caught up in the hype. Find out how they got to be there, because it wasn't by accident. When you're with extraordinary people, and what I've been blessed is, I've been with the greatest players of all time, and almost every one of them you could probably ever mention. I've been around them, and I wasn't that caught up as much as you would think, although people think I'm around just trying to get their autograph and everything. I'm just getting the secrets to the sauce. That's been my secret. I'm with Roger Staubach. I want to know how he got through the Navy. I want to know how he won an Iceman. I want to know how he won a Super Bowl. I want to know how he built the Staubach Company. I want to know how he transitioned. I want to know all that stuff when I was in my 20s. Yeah, I was excited to be around Roger, but I wanted more of the secrets to the sauce. And I think my key is when I've been around extraordinary people of all levels, not just celebrities, I want to take from them those ingredients so that I can incorporate it into mine, because I had no intention of being successful when I grew up. I was not interested. I did not want to be successful. I wanted to be significant. I wanted to be extraordinary. I wanted to be the best that ever was, whatever I decided to do. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I run into people all the time. I was like, well, tell me what it is. And do you want to be extraordinary or not? Do you want to be significant or not? Like, if you just want to be good, great, or maybe successful, nothing wrong with that. I respect it. But I'm probably going to forget you 15 minutes after I met you. Right? Can you tell me who played second base 20 years ago for the Mets on a team that lost? No. You remember guys who make the Hall of Fame. You remember guys that took their backs and won championships. Those are the people you remember.
So what's been the common denominator, the secret sauce that you've seen the most between athletes and business owners that they all have? Is it a hunger? Is it a drive, a work ethic?
It is a why. It's always a purpose. They come up with a purpose, and sometimes those purposes are shallow. It's not always some deep-rooted purpose. But I think one of the most common is the learning. Are you, learners are earners, readers are leaders. Are you coachable? It's amazing how many people you can't tell them shit. You can't teach them anything. They think they know everything. The minute you think you know a lot, it's just really what you're really telling me is you know nothing. I just know how little I know, and I'm like a dog without a bone. So I go to Coach Knight, Bob Knight, greatest coach maybe ever. I've met them all, Jay Wright, Boeheim, Krzyzewski, and they're all great coaches. But Bob Knight always had my attention because the vigor, the energy, and he really changed the game in many ways. Won on a high level without one and dones, did it the right way, never got in any trouble other than a couple of shenanigans on the court. And I go to his house to sell his collection, and one thing I notice, besides the 300 red sweaters and trophies and all kinds of crap, an insane amount of books. And I say to Coach, we're in Lubbock, Texas. I don't know where the hell that is still to this day, but I was there a few times. No, I'm trying to insult anybody in Texas, but it was definitely out of the way somewhere. And I go, Coach, what are you doing with all these books? And he just mumbles, I said, Coach, do you read these books? Because Every basketball book I had ever heard of, and then some, was in these bookshelves. And there were a lot of them. I'm not talking about 10, 20. I'm talking about hundreds of basketball books. Now, here's the greatest coach you ever want to meet. No one knowing the game better. And I started opening up these books, and these are books that have been looked through. They're marked. There are little stickums in there. And at the end, it's like you don't become extraordinary by just becoming pretty good at something. You got to be looking for every little angle, and that's the common denominator, is that there is no distance to walk or go to find out something that can get you better. There's no compromise in that. And I ask people out there, like, you want to be a great business person. Have you watched every Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Oprah, Jay-Z, when you think about the greatest business people of our time right now, if you're that serious about being a great business person, have you watched every article or watched every video that these guys have done? And when I go to schools, when I go to ask people that, 99% of the time is no. You want to be a great you want to write screenplays. Have you met every producer, every screenplay writer? No. If you want to be extraordinary, you have to know who the best is and be clear about what they're doing so you know what you're competing against, what you're beating. And what I love is the sense I get from Hank Aaron. So I'm with Hank Aaron. We forget we're on camera. Great interview. We're on my couch. Matter of fact, I do 2 parts in this interview. And at a time when he wasn't doing any interviews, I said, Hank, how important is it, the Hall of Fame, home run? He goes, Brandon, that's what upsets me, is that most people look at me as a home run hitter. I was a 5-tool player. Look at my total bases. Look at my total hits. Not only home runs, RBIs, I was right up there. Most doubles. I had a gun for an arm. And that got my attention. There's Hank Aaron going, I just wasn't a home run hitter. But also, he said, when I was a kid, this really got my attention. He goes, I knew what every one of my Little Leagues, I knew every one of the other kids in the neighborhood and what their average was, how many hits they got, how many home runs. When I played in the major leagues, I knew exactly what Willie Mays had, Frank Robinson. I knew exactly what I was trying to beat. I watched every one of those numbers, so I want to make sure I beat every one of them. And that's what I ask people that are listening to this, is like, are you fully committed to being the best that ever was? Because if you are, then the first step is you got to know who the best are right now, what you're even trying to beat. You got to engage or follow. In this day and age, it's a couple clicks and a pick. You can. And that's what I've learned from doing what I'm doing as I'm with these athletes, is finding out those common denominators that are very similar, which is learning. Just having an insatiable appetite for curiosity and learning will bring you past success and maybe even to significance.
I mean, that's the exact reason why I started this podcast and called it Perfectly Mentored. It was my own personal desire to start learning. And if I called people and said, hey, can I pick your brain for an hour? Most people would say no, but suddenly I turned into, hey, can I interview you for an hour?
Me too. I'm 200 pods later. What do you think I did? I woke up. If you read my book, I woke up, I realized I was richer than I ever thought I was ever going to be. I was bankrupt at the same time. How am I going to call up sleep doctors, sex doctors, health doctors, nutritionists, and get the best of the best and get them to give me the goods? So I started a pod. I built a nice little studio here, and then come on, I take them to a Yankee game, hang out for the day. I've stayed Ken Blanchard for the day, like a guru of all gurus. Ken Blanchard spent a day. John Gray was here for 2 days. At the end of the day, I love your attitude. That's exactly right. If you want to know the best, you got to get to know the best, and you got to scheme and dream about how you're going to get to the best. And I love scheming and dreamers. And that's exactly what you did. You're like, hey, how am I going to get these smart people in my loop? You were scheming and dreaming. And that's my new concept that I'm moving forward. That'll be the title of my next book, Scheming and Dreaming.
I want to get tactical for a second.
Sure.
You're an excellent salesperson. I mean, anyone that sells dirt, you sold Derek Jeter game dirt for how much? It was like $350, something like that?
I mean, there are various types of dirt. Not all dirt is created equal. Yeah. And we have sold almost $50 million of dirt products. So we have sold a lot of dirt.
So safe to say you're a great salesperson. One of the key parts of the sales cycle is negotiations, right? And you just put out an ebook on this. You're very vocal about it. What tips can you give the listeners on how to become better negotiators? Well,
first of all, if you go to BrandonSteiner.com, you click on, right away you get the my 22 most important rules of negotiating. What I will say is that everybody, and I mean everyone, can improve their negotiation, become a great negotiator. You probably negotiate great, but I'm a great negotiator. And there's a fine difference between negotiating great and being a great negotiator. And there are a lot of tools, and a lot of people think it's about being aggressive. But the first tip is about being a great listener. You have to really, really understand who you're talking to and really what they want. And if you can figure out what that other person wants and what's really important to that person, which remember I said earlier, the most important thing always has to be the most important thing. But when you're negotiating, you know what's important to you because you're a self-serving, selfish person like what most people are, thinking about basically the most important things themselves. But great negotiators realize that instinctively they'll take care of themselves, but the way to get to take care of yourselves is to take care of others. So in great negotiating, if you're listening, people will give you the cues by their voice changing, their body language. They'll give it away. They'll tell you what's important. And your goal is to deliver it and to be authentic and to really hone in. Because once I give you what you want, you're going to be a lot easier in giving me what I want. Because ultimately the best negotiation is when two people walk away, feel like they maybe lost a little and they won a little. Right? Nobody wants to walk away saying, hey, I killed that person, because the next negotiation won't go well, or I'll be veering away and not want to negotiate with you. So, you want to be in a win-win situation. And the way you do that is focus on what the other person wants and drill down, because the faster you get that person what they want, more than likely they're going to relax because they kind of got what they needed, and they're going to be a lot more liberal and easier going to give you what you want. And listening is so underrated. And a lot of people think great negotiating is about being a good talker and being a good salesman. It's being an exceptional listener. I'm not the best listener all the time, but in negotiating, my hearing is insane.
One of my first mentors ever, that's what they said to me. God gave you two ears and one mouth
Yeah.
for a reason.
Yeah, I think that's some of the best advice. I mean, I think timing also is critical. Because I could probably do an hour on negotiating, but I think timing is very important. And just to give you one good nugget, for those of you out there that want to ask your boss for a raise, it's really not the best time just to ask your boss for a raise any time. There is a best time, and that's generally Friday. Monday is a very busy day. You're really trying to set up your week. You've got a lot of pressure to make sure your week goes well. Tuesday, you're in the middle of executing the strategy you set up on Monday, and Wednesday, the same thing. Thursday, you're really trying to make sure that everything you're supposed to get done for Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday is getting done, because the week's almost out. You got numbers to hit. Friday, if you're a good manager, most of your stuff is done, and come after lunch, you're probably starting to ease up and get ready for the weekend if you're a good manager. And that's the ultimate time to ask your boss for a raise. Friday after lunch, when they got the weekend ahead of them, there's not a lot of pressure, because the next step for them to put the squeeze on would be for Monday. So the best time to ask for a raise is Friday afternoon. But in general, timing is very important. Not only when you ask, but also the way you ask for things. So when somebody's pressing, sometimes you have to have faith and say and possibly give in on certain things that you may want in a negotiation, because you can sense the timing's wrong. Money's tight, and it's not the time to get that extra. And really just take what you can, because another couple of days and maybe they're going to someone else. So I think the last thing I'll say is, when you're negotiating, is you have to know what's important. I always like to make a list. A lot of people, I always ask, like, what's winning for you in this negotiation? And it's amazing how many people don't know. They want a raise, but they really don't know how much of a raise or really what they want. They just want something. And it's really a very disorganized, ineffective way to go about negotiating. You have to know what you want, and you have to know the order of what you want in importance, so that if you don't get everything, you got your most important things covered first. And a lot of people will negotiate, and then at the end they come back to me with something that says, oh, I forgot about this. This is really important. I'm like, we've been negotiating for a week, and now you're coming in with like this deal changer?
Yeah.
I mean, so you got to have, the order of what you're asking for. So if some things get cut out maybe because you didn't get to them, there are smaller things on the bottom of your list. It's amazing how people are not organized on what they want and the order of importance.
Line,
yeah,
right? So
yeah.
many people negotiate a price and say, I'm prepared to walk away at this. And are you really?
And by the way, one last thing, never give an ultimatum. That's a bunch of bullshit. I mean, do not give an ultimatum. It's a sign of weakness. I only give an ultimatum when I'm at my wit's end and I'm basically about to lose. When people start coming in and start telling me, do this, do that, or else, I'm like, boy, you're toast. You're in the oven. You're burnt, aren't you? And then I'm just deciding whether I just want to roll them over and kick them out, or I just feel bad for them and feel sorry for them. Because when you give ultimatums, that means you have nowhere else to go and you're flat out of strategy or you have nothing else to give, and it's not a good position of leverage or anything else. So I'm not a fan of ultimatums. I don't give them, and I don't like when they're given to me.
We'll end with this. If you were to rebuild Steiner Sports in 2019, in the 2019 world with all the tools you have right now, how would you rebuild?
Simply, I mean, and I'm constantly, it's a great question that you're asking me, and I'm constantly thinking about that question because why should that be hypothetical? I mean, why wouldn't you, if you could, why wouldn't you rebuild it? I think, to me, the strategy for Steiner is to really get our online game to another level and get the customer what they want differently than what we're even doing now. Websites are great and the social media and all that, but there's definitely more what the customer's looking for in our business online, and I'd rebuild it with much, and probably I'm in the process of doing this actually, I'd rebuild this with much younger and smarter online people that can really bring home what we're doing even more so. I think what's lost at Steiner that I'm upset about is the story. With less talking, less sales interaction, the story about not only the buy the bat, but where that bat came from, or where that jersey came from, and what happened during that game, what happened during that season, and why that autograph means something. Like, Frank Robinson just passed away recently. Guy won MVP in both leagues, probably one of the 10 greatest baseball players of all time. And it was a mention, but the story about him, because it's so many years ago, really got lost. It's lost on our site. It's lost in general. It's on to the next thing. And that's somebody like we shouldn't be forgetting about Frank. Frank was, playing in an era where you couldn't stay at the same hotel as white players. I mean, there's so many stories about Frank, first black manager. That's a guy that we should be talking a lot about. And instead, like it happened, it was like one day, little footnote on the bottom of the screen, and it's over. And I feel like my obligation or my focus now is to not let fans forget the story. I want to bring those stories back. I've got a lot of those stories to tell, not only from my words, but I've interviewed so many players, and I want to get those videos around the products so that when even little Johnny, who's 16, who couldn't possibly know about Frank Robinson, he can watch a couple quick videos to really put it in perspective how great this player was, 500 home run hitter. So the goal for Steiner is to just get caught up with the times of what people are looking for, which is more video content, more storytelling, more experiential, and make buying a collectible a lot more engaging and fun.
Two final questions for you. One is, what's the most expensive piece of memorabilia you have, and your favorite sports moment of all time?
Well, my favorite sports moment of all time is simple. It's Game 7, Rangers Devils. Obviously winning the Stanley Cup right there, number 2. I was a Ranger fan, 54 years of waiting. You're young, you don't remember that exactly, but I mean, that was an amazing time in New York, and it kind of related to the Cubs winning recently, or the Red Sox in 2004. But Game 7 of the Devils, where we were cursed.
Canadians fan, by the way.
No problem.
We're approaching that.
And spent a lot of time with that 95 team. With Claude Lemieux and a whole bunch of guys. I went out to dinner with that whole team just as a complete fluke. Brian Bellows, I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, of course.
That whole team was in New York. They want to go to Peter Luger's, and I made friends with, I think it was Schneider.
Yep.
And Bellows, and they said, you said you can get us to that steakhouse. I said, yeah, I'll get a reservation. How many are 20? I said, you didn't tell me the whole team. I mean, that's hard to get a reservation for 4. But meanwhile, they hooked Schneider up with the bill. But I went out with the entire Montreal Canadiens team at Peter Luger's, which is amazing. I didn't know they would win the cup that year, but meanwhile, we're hanging out just like a bunch of, we've been together forever. And it was just amazing, and love the hockey players. So that's my favorite sporting event, was the Devils, because it was so emotional. And we come back from being down 3-2, and then with 20 seconds left, the Devils score that goal, and we think we're done. And it goes into double overtime. The winner's going to the cup, and it was just one of my most favorite games, favorite sporting events. So there have been many. Super Bowl 21, Giants, Denver, my first Super Bowl of many. I'll never forget the feeling, and 10-9 at half, and just that kind of environment. I'd never really been in that kind of environment before, let alone being in a Super Bowl. I was just a poor kid from Brooklyn. Who knows, I was going to go all the way to Pasadena. That was cool. My first big sporting event that I went to back in '87. What was the other question?
The most expensive piece of memorabilia.
It's hard to say, just because there's a lot of different things I have, but one of my favorite, and it goes right up there, is Mariano's cleats I got from him the last game at the old stadium, from the last pitch ever. I have those cleats with the dirt on them and everything, and I'm right in the picture of him throwing that last pitch. I was right in the first row by third base, and then after the game, he had collected some dirt, which I put part of it in a really beautiful glass vase, and then I kept the bag of the dirt that he had collected along with those cleats. And I just love that, just because of the relationship, putting that old stadium to bed, and what I did with that old stadium was special. So I love that item. I'm not sure it's the most expensive I have, but it's right up there.
Perfect. Brandon, thank you so
Yeah,
much.
pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Hopefully this was helpful, and good luck with your pod, and appreciate you, and keep in touch. If you're out there, BrandonSteiner.com, or look me up on LinkedIn and just message me. You got to follow me because I think I'm over the limit on connections.
Perfect. Thank you.